Right, good evening ladies and gentlemen. We commence the meeting on what I hope to be a very polite and civil neighbourhood plan meeting. First of all, I welcome you all to the meeting, and I must inform you that Mr. Chairman has commenced filming and recording this meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed and recorded, please say so. You have the option of leaving the meeting, or if you stay here and Mr. Chairman illegally records you or films you, you can take civil action against him. Mr. Chairman is liable after this morning. He can film councillors, but not you, the public, when you speak or record you.
I'm here as a member of the public and do not wish to be filmed or recorded.
Mr. Chairman, I am here as a member of the public and I do not wish to be recorded.
I'm a member of the public and I don't want to be recorded either.
I'm a member of the public and I don't want to be recorded. And I'm a member of the public that wish to be recorded.
So, Mr. Chairman, do you understand your actions if you publish this meeting on the internet and these voices are recorded? You will be liable. Pictures or voice. Right, as this is a public meeting, the law requires the chairman of the parish council to chair a parish meeting at present, and this is the basis of which I have the authority to control the meeting. What is the purpose of the meeting, and explain what is going to happen, how we intend to achieve the meeting within the time scale. The time scale is two hours we've got. Members of the public, speaking time will limit to 3 to 4 minutes. That will enable anybody to speak, give their comments, and the secretary to take the notes. The order in which we will pass participation, and I will not accept inappropriate behaviour or personal issues. This is about issues and not personalities. Any problems, I will shut down the meeting. As chairman of the meeting, I can adjourn it for a short time if the meeting gets too heated. If it persists, I can close the meeting. I would advise you that 2 warnings will be issued to cease this behaviour, and if it is not heeded, I will adjourn the meeting for 2 minutes. After restarting, if the bad behaviour still continues, I will close the meeting. Now, is that understood? This is not a free-for-all. This is a civil, polite meeting, and I expect members of the public to conduct and behave in that manner. I've already read the video recording and the placement on the internet. Right, Chairman's welcome. I welcome you all to this meeting of the neighbourhood plan. Please heed what I've said and try to have a civil and polite and orderly meeting. We have a 2-hour time frame in which to get through. Now we go on to the chairman's brief maps. Right, here you can see the map of Polruan with the boundaries as defined by Caroline Council. This is a planning boundary. That is a conservation boundary. This is Kendall Park, fire station. This area is only left to be filled. We are surrounded by National Trust land and farmland. There is only 2 areas left, or 3 areas left. Top of Kendall Park, whatever the town trust to decide with Beverley, and what was known as Hendersfield, which was earmarked by the educational authorities for the new school. That is the limit of the planning boundaries for Polruan. White cross, please. This is a picture of the parish. You go back to the aerial view, please. Overall picture of the parish, taken in Polruan and Badinnick. And as you can see, the fields available. Polruan outline comes along the bottom. There's a campsite, Nordown Lane, Hendersfield where the proposed school was, but it seems to have dropped out the picture. Badinnick is limited to this line, as Adrian will show you on the map. There is the limit of Badinnick. All the rest round is agricultural fields and is private, or owned by National Trust. So really, we are extremely limited in what planning and development we can do. So we've really got to make the best of a bad job. There's another view of Budinick, view of the harbour. There's the campsite. We're down near Penmarlem now, where the harbour master is developing. There's a picture of Penmarlem, where the harbour master has got a new shed and is gradually developing, putting in boats. That was taken before the house here was built. So you've got an overall picture now of the areas we're looking at and what limitations is placed on the development of the parish land takers. Anybody any questions?
It's not in any way controversial. Does the parish plan, the neighbourhood plan, cover the building of houses, or is it overall development?
It's overall development for the next 20 to 30 years.
Okay, including proposed industry, for instance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That is part of what Penmarlem has taken place. I believe Penmarlem are developing this and they've got permitted development rights for workshops. Yes? Come on.
Thank you, Chairman. You've described the current situation, but we're looking for 20 to 30 years.
That's right.
The government is changing the rules day by day, so I would suggest that the committee look at all possible opportunities, not necessarily to restrict their investigations into what you have described as current, because I think things are changing quickly.
I will have to bear it in mind, but what I was demonstrating is the limit of our boundaries. Unfortunately, I cannot get maps outside of Budinick, or I can't even get maps of Whitecross. So people, if the government were planning to expand their county, they need to show us the maps. I'm going on the development plan, which comes up on site, and they're still working on 2007 scenarios. Councillor Hannaford might have access to more arrangements, but up until this present time, this is all we've got to go on.
I was under the impression that the Whitecross, both sides of Lake Arrowborough, and then was earmarked for development as well at some stage.
Well, I haven't seen anything on any mapping system to show it at all. In fact, it doesn't even come up on the Carradon plan. Basically, the Carradon plan states is that there's 2,000 homes to be built in the Discard Loo district, which we're part of. The Discard area is already mapped out for 1,000 homes. Loo, I believe, is 600 homes. That's 400 to be spread across. But the only development land you see actually written on the plan is it Discard earmark.
Is this not the purpose of the meeting now, though, that if land of Whitecross, if the parish feel that land of Whitecross would be a suitable place to develop, then that's the route to move?
Well, that will come
regardless of whether there's a red line drawn around it now. We're saying, well, there's a good spot, let's have some industry and housing built there.
Well, that's good. Well, as we go round asking members of the public their ideas, this could be encompassed in the plan. But at the moment, I haven't got any maps of the Whitecross area because they're not available. And really, I'd have to leave that one to Councillor Hannaford for the next time we have a meeting to see what she can find in the depths of county. Right, anybody any questions so far? Yes, please.
Can I just make an observation that development boundaries have been removed, they don't exist. As a community and a neighbourhood plan group, you do have the powers to say we do want a development boundary, but I would not restrict yourself to that red line because that Carradon plan that you've got there is old, like you say, it's 2007, the last saved policy, but the government has said development boundaries are not, have been removed. You can choose to put them back if that's your wish, but I think I would be looking at Whitecross or Lanteglos Highway. I'm not saying have development there, I'm just saying think what the needs are of the area and look at where the most appropriate area is to meet that need for industry or houses or whatever it is you want to do. You could use, I guess with permission from Ordnance Survey, you can use Ordnance Survey maps. Indeed, I have printed some up at Whitecross to put the telephone box there. But I'll see what I can find. There must be plans because most of that housing up there is owned by Cornwall Council through Cornwall Housing. 'Cause it's social housing, so there must be some plans somewhere, and I'll pledge to see what I can find for you. But just wanted to correct you about the red line. I'm sorry to do that, but
That's right. The red line still might not be able to be shifted because you can show the National Trust maps up, please.
the geography may stop you from doing it, but they aren't a boundary that you cannot go outside of that. You can.
Right, here's the National Trust maps of the land they own. So Polruan is extremely limited. S is private, and as you see the limit of Polruan, excuse me, walking across the city, you've got the campsite there, Nordane Lane, Hendersfield, what the Town Trust own, and back to Kendall Park. The rest, all in red, etched in red, is National Trust, and Polruan is extremely limited to development because of National Trust, ANOB, and SSI. So really, we are limited in boundaries, which then again you say points to Whitecross and the Nick area.
I know what an SSI is, but what's an ANOB?
Area
Ah, sorry. These initials.
So we got the next map of the Nick. So
I'll have to come out, please. Sorry. That was white. Sorry, that one didn't know.
go back to the old one then. Go back to the old one. Right, the old one, as you can see, as Councillor Wakeham was saying, Mr. Wakeham was saying, you've got the Whitecross area, Lemenian, so these are the fields, for those who don't know the area, up at Whitecross, in the surrounding area, are fields which could possibly appear on the plan. But there is still a lot of National Trust area surrounding the whole of this parish.
Chairman, I'm sorry to ask an obvious question, but have you spoken to the National Trust? And if there's a willing landlord, just because it's an area of outstanding natural beauty, doesn't mean to say that you can't have development there, but you may want to have, you might want to be very prescriptive to protect the AONB, but that doesn't mean you can't have development. It just means you've have to have higher standards and higher hoops to jump through. So if you've identified a need and thought it might be appropriate in one of those areas that is owned by the National Trust, I think you could go to speak to them and see how they felt about it. You have to have a willing landlord, but it doesn't mean to say you can't have development in the AONB. You can, but you have to be very careful.
So that would be one of the points we can put down on our notes. That the National Trust can be approached to release land if necessary.
Well, they may not want to.
They may not want to, but it can be changed. Right, we go on to the next one now. So has anybody got any question of the maps or an overall picture of the area and what we're looking at? Well, now hand you over to Councillor Wild, Mr. Wild, as he's a member of the public, who's going to lead the parish plan at this meeting.
We're going to have a period now, Mr. Chairman, where you're going to ask the audience to participate at this stage.
Yes, please, for the audience's ideas. So, Mr. Wakeham.
I would like to see houses for youngsters. We need to encourage youngsters to live in the area. I mean, I've got two children that are looking to buy places, but there's just no around in the area for youngsters to move into. The council houses aren't there anymore. And I think as a parish we should be encouraging youngsters to stay in the area and try and work in our area. But
So,
Polruan's overcrowded with second hands and expensive property, as we've discussed tonight already. And I just think that we've got to try and provide somewhere for youngsters to live, to keep the village alive, or it will die.
So affordable housing, then everybody would be agreed, is one of the priorities.
Yeah.
It is. This is the first subject.
First subject.
Can I ask a question then?
Yeah.
When we built the other affordable housing, it ended up being actually only very few local people moving into it. And it seems to me that it's mainly people from outside the village who have moved into those houses.
The problem there lies is we've been looking at housing with Louise Dwelly and Councillor Hannaford. There's a slight argument going on. When you build social housing, you come under that people from everywhere can fill them, am I right?
There is a local connection policy.
Yeah.
So first, and that's secured by a legal agreement, it's called a Section 106 agreement. So those ones up the top, where you live up the top there, they should be occupied first off by somebody with a local
But
connection
there
to
weren't
the
enough
parish.
local people wanting to move
Exactly.
in. So what's the point in building more if there weren't enough locals wanting to
Because
that were there?
at one moment in time there might be X amount of people, and a year later there might be Y. It's a moving. It's a
I do
moving
understand
feast.
that, but it seems to me that what you need is work for young people to make them want to stay in the area.
Well, this is part of the neighbourhood plan to revolve round. If
All I was going to say
Adrian
with respect to Kendall Park is when it was initially built, 13 out of 15 houses went to people who met the Section 106, and since that time going forward, it's now 15 out of 15 people of 15 properties would meet Section 106 of local or adjacent parish.
on the housing register, Councillor Hannaford got, there's, I believe, 64 local applicants, was the last count,
I can't remember.
of people applying for affordable housing. The problem that we've looked at with Louise Dwelly, Councillor Hannaford and Mr Wilde is that what the policy Lou operates is they've operated with a set of houses they've built as a local use. Is that the way to describe it?
I think you're referring to a development that Westlew Town Trust undertook. They are a charity. They decided that they didn't want to be part of the Cornwall Council Home Choice, which has got an agreed set of allocations, like you're considered to be local if you've lived here for 3 years, or you work in the community, or you have dependent relatives. Personally, I don't think that's long enough. I think it needs to be a much longer. But what Westlew Town Trust did is they opted out of using home choice and decided they were going to set their own policy, their own allocations policy, and they said they just invited people to apply, and the trustees chose who they wanted rather than going through the Cornwall Council. That is an option that you can use, but it means that you have to have the capacity, which Westlew Town Trust have got, because they're a large landowner and they've got systems set up to be landlords. So there are pros and cons to that. I think you could, and I know the St Ives neighbourhood plan, the Roseland neighbourhood plan, the Lane neighbourhood plan, have all put policies in that saying any new development should only be occupied by people that live here as their main residence. That's in reference to second homes. The government so far, through the independent inspector, who in effect is the Secretary of State, has pulled out that policy and said it's unenforceable, it's against people's human rights. But there is an example, which is a very early adopted plan in Linton and Lynmouth, where they had that prime occupancy, and that did get through the inspection. So this is something that we're, I
So
see it all the time.
so
So there's
prime
different
occupancy
ways.
is a
Yeah,
terminology.
yeah.
Whereas before,
But it's all based on
Effectively.
evidence. So if you can build the evidence that second home ownership, and I know there's good things about second home ownership in the village, if you can show that it's affecting the sustainability, the vibrancy, the viability of the village through evidence and submit that, then that's the route to take.
so the key word of, the old word of keyword housing's out the window. The word we'd have to use now is prime occupancy.
Primary occupancy, yeah.
Mr. Truman.
I think in the village personally, that there is a shortage of one-bedroom properties. Every time someone applies, that is a single person, because there are numerous properties with 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, they're automatically turned down saying that it's inappropriate for you to take a 2 or 3 bedroom property. Would it not be more appropriate to make some 1 bedroom apartments or something of that description that would suit the young people? There's a lot of young people I know in the village that would like a place of their own, and a 1 bedroom place would be appropriate for them as a stepping stone, if not permanent resident. But I find smaller properties aren't available, and this is where I think a lot of the youngsters could have,
It's an idea we can put forward for the next meeting.
a house.
One bit shortage of smaller properties. Right, next question please. Yes, Mr. Hill.
On the same point, when Kendall Park was being considered, I made the same suggestion, and I seem to remember at the time I was told that they are not in a position through various rules to do 1 bedroom places.
Well,
The point is a very good one for 1 bedroom places, because you apply for a council house as a single person, they won't give you a 2 bedroom.
This is the idea of the neighbourhood plan, and that could be one of the items on the neighbourhood plan, that if we propose building any form of housing, single bedroom, single room occupancy would be of prime concern.
Oh, good idea.
Would that be acceptable?
Oh, yes.
I was just asking Councillor Alfred, who
Can
drives his neighbourhood
I,
plans.
can I make a suggestion? It's all based on evidence. Yes, you've got some good anecdotal evidence, but in my casework that I do at my surgery, I know there's one family that have got 7 people in a 3-bedroom house. So the point about that is you need to base your recommendations, your policies on evidence. So perhaps a housing needs survey, so you actually survey within the village, sorry, not just the village, we're talking the parish here, within the parish, to ask, what is your housing need? So when you say, we need so many 1 bedrooms, so many 2, and actually there's a couple of families that need a 4 or 5 bedroom, that it's coming from a basis of fact and knowledge, rather than just probably really well founded, but not anecdotal.
So really, this is a copy of the Fowey neighbourhood plan, which to me verges back to the parish plan, which we're not supposed to be doing. So when we do our survey being a poll runner, I talk a poll runner, I forget the country people. I'll be accused of other language in a minute. Encompassing the whole parish and Lanteglos, for a better turn of phrase. So when we look at our neighbourhood plan for the parish, that housing could be one of the main points to be put on as a housing survey. Do we need 1, 2, 3,
10.
or 10? Next question, please.
Does the council have any sort of powers of compulsory purchase?
It's the parish council
Yeah.
doesn't, but Cornwall Council does.
Because I was thinking about, I saw you had the farm up on your list at the front there, which as long as I've lived here has just been mouldering quietly away and becoming more and more of an eyesore as you come into the village. And yet it's in a prime position in the village.
Well, that is one of what Mr. Wiles, as he's going to go walk us round the parish. Townsend Farm will come up for your suggestion.
Well, one of the things I suggested when I was a councillor was that we should actually get hold of that property and turn it into a series of craft workshops with a small dwelling unit above. Get a load of people in there producing artworks of various sorts. People coming into the village would have a reason to walk up through the village. There'd actually be something here for them. It would bring more people into the village, generate more income for them.
I'd hate to put the dampener on that bit because the word craft workshops and arty stuff,
Makes you reach for your gun, doesn't it?
No, they used it when the chapels were being purchased dirt cheap. And the example is the Methodist Chapel 8 West Street. The exact words of pottery, art and craft workshop was used in their planning applications. Mr. Truman, who was a builder then, and we were running several groups on looking at derelict houses in Polroyd, offered 50,000 to purchase West Street Methodist Chapel. It was turned down, point blank. Methodist Chapel 8 West Street was sold for 19,000 for the exact purpose you said.
That doesn't
It's
mean
never
that the
been
idea
done.
isn't valid, though, does it?
Oh no, but the same with the chapel up at Highway. That came under the same workshop,
I'll
craft,
say
proper
again, that
workshop.
doesn't mean the idea isn't valid,
You know,
does it?
it's a valid idea, but I think a lot of people would say that's a set of crafty word in order to purchase buildings on the cheap.
Yeah, but surely,
I didn't imagine them purchasing them, I imagined them renting them.
surely if you stipulate that in the parish plan, it'll be in stone, but that's what it's going to be used for, surely? Because that's the idea of it, isn't it? Or not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why not? That is a very, very, very good suggestion that, you know, we should word it certain ways that these places can be used for what it says on the pen, not changed for something else. If that, I don't really understand it, but I assume that's what it's there for. So A, B and C will be used for A, B and C and nothing else.
You see, Townsend Farm, I think got sold in about 97. And Townsend Farm, to me, this is an example, would make, say, 5 single, 1 unit residential houses for old people. Easy park and easy walk, nice views all on the flat. You know, that's just my idea.
That's if you can buy it.
That's if you can buy it, or, as Mr. Whitcroft says, compulsory purchase order on it.
I offered the guy £500,000 for that personally, Toby, Luther, and he turned it down, blank.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Whitcroft?
Not in terms of compulsory purchase, it's been done by other councils, I know. Not parish councils, but
Well, parish
It's a
council,
flat now.
is that okay, Chairman? I'll come back on that. Parish councils don't have the powers to do that.
that's what I said.
Only Cornwall Council does have the power, but you need to look into the criteria that trigger it. It's usually, we're threatening it at the moment for a hotel at Fistral Bay that's blighting the area. So there has to be a reason, and I'm not saying that's not true of this, because it's been like it for so long. But I think it has to be for something really strategic. So if you had a view about what you wanted to use it for, sometimes the threat of compulsory purchase can sometimes bring people to the table.
I'm sure.
Because I'm sure that's not worth £500,000. I can go and investigate that.
So
Chairman,
we
for
can
you.
investigate that. Maybe one of the questions we can ask you, investigate.
I can assure you
compulsory purchase
turned
order.
it down.
Yeah, right. Mr. Wall, do you want me to leave
Okay.
around the village?
Go on then.
Okay, right then. So we start by looking round the village. I don't need my glasses for this one. Right. Kendall Park. Right, we're now up the top. Here we are. We've looked at Townsend, the possible of compulsory purchase order for development, for craft workshops, for single residential units for the elderly. We now go on to Vevery. Now, Vevery is now back in Town Trust hands. Unfortunately, I don't know what the Town Trust intend to do with it, so I'll invite Mr. Hill, if they got any plans for the next 20, 30 years with Everett, as it's a very big space.
It's not back in Town Trust hands, Mr Adams. The reservoir is still under lease to South West Water.
For the next 25-year lease, is it, that expires?
No, it's a 99-year lease.
No? And when
From
does that expire?
1932. It's got about 17, 18 years to
17,
run.
18 years time.
And South West Water have told us that they consider it a business lease, and therefore they will have the rights to renew it, even though we've asked them to surrender it because it hasn't been used for several years. They are in the process of doing work to disconnect it from the mains, but they are so far have refused to return it.
I'll come back on that business lease, because we're about looking at a lease concerning this business of tenure, a tenure of business, where if you run a business, you can secure the next lease on it, because say you've got valuable equipment and everything else in it. And this is to do with the public toilets out at Frogmore with the National Trust. So have you got that, has the Town Trust got that agreement with South Water that they got security of tenure after the lease expires?
Now, your security of tenure comes under the 1954 Landlord and Tenant Act. And as this lease was signed in 1932 or somewhat, they consider that it has that protection.
Right. So we now know what's happening with Every really can't be developed then.
Well, I didn't say that. We are still trying to negotiate with South West Water to return the reservoir, but as that's the middle section of the whole of the Beverley land, without it we can't really plan to do very much.
And you've got no ideas you could put to the building, what you'd like me to do with it. So if we've got no ideas, we as a neighbourhood plan got to discount it.
Until such time as it's back in our possession, we're not wasting our time discussing ifs and buts. You know, we can't plan anything if it isn't ours to plan on.
Right, we move on then. And then we move on to, there's a private field here owned by Mrs Taylor, which we'd have to look at. And the next is the other side of campsite, is Hendersfield, which is the lower side of Nordane Lane, between the campsite and Nordane Lane. Now this was earmarked for the new school by the education authorities. For some reason now that mark has dropped off. So I would ask Councillor Hannaford if she could find out if that is still being looked at for a new school.
I don't think so.
Earmarked. So that is one piece of land that should be developed on.
What's it called, John?
Well, the name, we call it Hendersfield. There's probably another name for it.
Hendersfield.
John,
Because
do they have
they're-
their kids around the school roll at the moment?
I haven't a clue. That's the next question.
30 something.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
It's not enough for a new
Yes.
school, is it?
There's one very tiny piece of land that, on the lower side of the old reservoir owned by Scott Gilchrist, on the higher side of Ferry Clyde. That is outside the red line, but previously to the red line being drawn was a scheduled building site.
So, but as Councillor Hannaford said, we can shift these lines.
Okay,
necessary.
I'm just telling you, it was a scheduled building
So
site.
we're looking down there.
Is it classified then as what's called a previously developed site or brownfield site? The government's brought in new legislation that brownfield sites don't even
No,
need
it's
planning
not a
permission.
brownfield site.
Is it? Okay, fine, sorry.
So that is another area, probably for one, maybe two single units. So we've now discussed Hendersfield. We're now moving back down. As you see, these fields are all National Trust, and they border all the way round, except for this one plot of land here. And that
It's
really
only
is the
half
extent
of
of
that, excuse me. It's only half of it, well, under, it's about 2/3 of that has been built on.
the 2/3 have been that built on. Adrian measured it, and it roughly works out as half an hectare. So that would look at the density, apparently, as we were told at a meeting is 15 dwellings per hectare. So you would look at it seven dwellings.
But if they were built instead of houses and single houses, built as single bedroom flats, one on top of the other, could you not get 2 in the space of 1?
Not being a builder, I have to ask Adrian on that.
Yes.
Technically, yes, it don't, the trouble then is amenity space and how that works, but
Well, there isn't any amenity space in a block of flats, is there?
well, that's it, you'd have to give a bit of garden outside, and would it be 50 square metres per house? Even though it would never
Wouldn't it be
work.
better to have a property than no property?
It's,
Right, so
Right,
that's the walk round Pole Ruin.
okay. So should we start with the affordable housing then?
Do you want to go to the Bedinick one, for the Bedinick people to have a look,
Oh, yeah.
over a look at Bedinick?
Let's go to the
Bedinick,
from
please?
Bedinick.
Yeah. So we look at Bedinick. Now, would Councillor Wagon, or would you like to comment? Mr Shackley, have you got any ideas, thoughts? You've got your map of Bedinick. Unfortunately, we've got no other maps. Have you any ideas for Bedinick?
I'm just,
The landlord's just here.
I know he is.
I'm just slightly surprised that I can understand that we've focused immediately on housing and how many people go in and whether there's a local context or whatever. I rather approach this slightly differently and try to have a look at the strategic big picture first of all, which begs asking a number of questions. What is the projection for the requirement for housing for local people over the period of 20 to 25 years? Now, at previous meetings, you might have already answered that, but obviously there is a clear need, perceived need for housing for local people. But the exam question is, how many? The second thing is employment. We're talking about young people or local people being engaged in employment, and perhaps we're looking at light industrial areas, whatever the case is. So that begs other questions which stream down, like communication availability of vehicles getting in and out, heavy loads, etc. So, because Paul Ruin has its obvious problems for future development, which we've just discussed over the last 40 minutes or so, and that is quite clear, if you are looking for X number of houses over the 20 to 25 year period, hopefully for young local people, and small industrial units for them to be engaged in employment, that does beg the question, where does it go in the parish? So, you know, is there a desire, is there a need for the extra housing and for the industrial units? That's not for me to answer. It's
So is this a chicken and the egg question? Which comes first? The chicken and the egg? The employment or the housing? Councillor Hannaford might answer that, or do we?
Well, you need both.
You need both.
They're linked.
They've got the interlink, but the trouble is with Bedinick, I always refer to the country, so excuse my non-PC word, is Bedinick hasn't got any infrastructure whatsoever.
There's a no-go.
So you've got to look at Bedinick. If we want employment for light employment uses, you need the infrastructure. There's no buses, no shops, there's no school, there's no doctors. So is part of the neighbourhood plan first for where we say to put the workshops, the employment, the housing, do we have to look at the infrastructure first?
Well, you're absolutely right. That there is no, you know, suitable infrastructure for expansion at the moment. But we're talking about a changing scenery over 20 to And if I can just go on, the other part of the question about what we ought to be asking ourselves, what we want within the parish for the next 20-25 years, is we've got to examine what we don't want. Do we want 6,000 wind turbines or solar acres and acres of solar voltaic panels? We might easily do. Do we want high-rise blocks of flats, etc., etc. So we also need to look at what we don't want.
Adrian,
Well, I was just going back to what you were saying, there isn't the infrastructure there, but that is the purpose of this. If, for argument's sake, this big bit of land here, we thought, well, that's perfect for building 200 houses and a site, and an industrial estate. Well, the infrastructure will come with that, won't it? And it's like with the common thing we say, well, there isn't the sewage and the water. If we're going to build it, it will all come with it. So
what we're saying,
I don't. There's no point trying to hold back on anything, because whatever is, as this plan progresses and something more concrete comes out of it, it will all fall into place. And trying to, I don't see the point in trying to think of a hurdle 3 steps ahead of ourselves.
Mr. Whitcomb.
Councillor Hannaford tells me that funding is available to conduct research into local needs for things like housing. Surely that's the first thing you should be doing in terms of your neighbourhood plan, is conducting research to find out facts to back up your plan.
So the first thing then we agree is
Well, that's what this meeting's
about.
To get the questionnaire, or get the basis of.
To evolve a questionnaire.
Yes, but you need facts, don't you? Like, as we've already said, how many people are there that actually want houses in this locality? And how many people of employable age are there in this county, in this area? And until you've got those facts, you can't actually.
That is already online in the document issued. If you care to look, but I must admit it baffles me in recent years.
That actually give facts, like how many young people want to live in the village.
Not how many.
But that's what we need to know, isn't it?
That's what I was referring to, the housing needs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what needs to be done, isn't it?
So we'll write that down then. One of the objects, the housing needs survey, part of the plan. Right.
You'd also need, to me, majority of the people in this parish live in Bullring, don't they?
Yep.
So I would have thought, obviously, if you want to get jobs, you've got to get jobs. You want, to me, Endersfield would be more suitable to a small industrial unit or a science park or something like that, where they got computers and all that. That would bring in the ones that need to work in that area.
You see, the only thing,
Otherwise, if we just keep going houses, then all we're going to get is retired people come down and. If you aren't going to do anything with the second homes, which is the council thing, then.
So what you're saying is, one of the questions on the housing survey would be, we're looking at a mix of employment and housing. They go together hand in hand.
Got to.
Yeah. But all jokes aside, John, seriously, I mean, to invite industry into an area, you need decent roads. And we know darn well, because we've had it stuck outside my house, juggernauts can't get around. Lorries can't get into Polry because the roads are not big enough. So if we're going to go down that avenue, you want to have it somewhere where there's a decent road. The only decent road in and out of the parish is the one at Whitecross that runs out the main road out to Bedinning.
So at the moment,
We've got to decide if we want industry
housing and employment, the arrows are all pointing to the Bedinning side.
Or a highway.
Or highway.
I wasn't
Bedinning Highway, Whitecross.
I wasn't thinking of heavy industrial units, heavy.
No.
I was thinking more like computer sciences, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
There's lots of places.
But everyone
And a
wants
lot of people can work from home anyway. Now, I can work from home. I'll do most of my work
Pardon?
from home.
High-speed broadband.
Well, we've got high-speed broadband here.
Yes.
We're up 40 megs in private user, 60 for
Showing off then.
We're fortunate we haven't got that argument.
So we are quite, on the technology side, it's the technology parts that we need.
Once again, sorry,
They tend to be more younger people anyway.
but once again, if we have got houses for the young people of the village, there are a number of people that commute to work anyway, so they still need somewhere to come home to and have a base. So no matter if there isn't employment in the village, a lot of people will seek employment hopefully elsewhere and fill other vacancies that are available, provided they got somewhere to live maybe.
Mr. Wall got his thoughts are that Poland is a dying village.
No.
Mostly because it's older people living here and employment is extremely limited, houses limited. There's Mrs. Sainsbury at the back nodding that in agreement that she thinks we're a dying village. I know it's controversial, but
It's true.
We can't.
so really we got to work on employment and housing at the same time.
Housing for local and people resident in there, not second homes again. You know, nothing to be sold off for second homes anymore. We've all done it in the past and disregard that. It's hindsight's a wonderful thing, but even in our era, as you well know, how many shops when we were boys? A dozen or more? And what have we got now?
World's changed,
So that's life though.
Yeah, but we still need,
Sainsbury's
but that
did a
all,
good
Yeah,
job.
that was
that was
the-
all employment for people that were there and living in the village. Now, we've got two places. And,
So
you know,
what we've come out of it mainly now is housing survey,
Industry
an
survey,
industry survey,
road surveys maybe.
road survey, infrastructure survey. But, Mr. Wall,
Okay.
you're leading.
Right. Let's talk about affordable housing. Now, we all agree that affordable housing is necessary. In Polruan, there is not very much affordable housing. The young people are leaving because they can't afford to live here. That's the truth of it. Polruan, because the younger people are leaving, is left with an ageing population. Give them 10 to 15 years, how many of us are going to be left? It's true, I thought. Now, what we have to do is build houses, should we say, development of, two-bedroom masonettes maybe, a fairly concentrated development that will be affordable for the young people, such that they can afford to live there on a minimum or living wage, as the fashionable word is now, to keep them in the village. And as Vic said, they can live in the village, okay, they may work locally, outside the village, but at least they've got a home base here. And that's going to be the only way to keep this village alive. If you don't keep the young people, the village dies. It's as simple as that. We can talk about all the industry you like. Now, for industry to move into a village like this is a non-starter because of the roads and communications. Whitecross is a different matter because you've got the roads. That you need. Now, if you look at what we have now with Kendall Park, we've got half an hectare. What we could do there is put some masonettes. In half an hectare we could probably get 20 units up there, 22 bedroom units. We could put a community hub up there. We couldn't put both, there's simply not the space. Half an hectare just isn't big enough. For houses, you talk about Hender's Field as being probably the best solution. That's where you could put up to 40 units perhaps, 40 affordable units for the young people. Is that what we want to do? No. The other thing is, we've got the school. We have a bus at the moment that runs up and down the hill and goes to Loo or wherever. Now, should the population of children fall in that school, and the school closes, children have to go far afield to the school, we will lose the bus, because the bus is funded by Cornwall Council for school runs.
Well, that's the argument for affordable housing, so that you get young families.
Well, that's
in,
right, get the families in here.
Then they send their children to the school.
Yeah, but without that, without attracting the younger people in here or encouraging the young people to stay here with young families, the whole thing starts to implode. And it's happening now, happening before your eyes.
Well, yes, so you need affordable housing.
Right. So,
Or young families.
so we propose to put, should we say, 20 units on Hendersfield? 20 affordable units.
Yes,
You're talking about two-bedroom units, but
Yeah.
earlier in the meeting, there was a big plea for single units.
That's
Would
correct.
it not be a good idea to have mixed some two-bedroom, some one-bedroom?
We could do that, something we could look at.
Surely
Well,
the
that
survey,
comes
the
out
survey
of
will
the
pick this
research,
up, doesn't it?
That, yeah, exactly, that's why we need the research. But I think that, you know, with young people, these houses are designated as young people's homes. Young people are children. So you're going to wind up with somebody in a single bedroom unit, suddenly finds wife's pregnant and wants a two-bedroom unit. So why not start off with standard units that we can build exactly the same, so exactly the same design, sort of mass produced if you like.
That's a look
But
nice.
what they're basically saying, Bernie, in the council themselves, or, you know, the affordable housing at Kendall Park, is that if you're a single person and there's a two-bedroom place available, you don't get it. Because
Well-
you're not eligible, because it's a two-bedroom place and not a one-bedroom
Yeah,
place.
well, okay, there's a case then, we're looking
So-
at single units.
You know, but at the end of the day, some of these youngsters got to start somewhere. If they're a single person, which a lot of them are, and need a base and would like to have a base of their own, surely a one-bedroom place is better than a no-bedroom
Yeah.
place.
But then
We need the survey to find
research
out.
will show us how many
We're
singles and how
just going
many.
around in circles.
Yeah, we're just-
We
so-
need this
How about
mix.
funding for these houses? Where does that come from?
There is funding available.
There is money from Cornwall Council have got a pot. The HCA, the government have a dimensional pot. So that there are ways of doing it. There's also, you know, you can do it traditionally, borrow the money and pay back the loans. You know, that there are different vehicles for that. I don't think at this stage you need to worry about the delivery. I think at this stage you will have to think about it. But at this stage, I think you're looking at what is the needs, what are the future needs for the village to maintain that vibrancy and vitality as a sustainable community, and the delivery bit solve that problem later.
Right, next item then, please.
Okay, you
Yeah.
did say parish, not village, didn't you?
Yeah, parish.
Parish.
Sorry.
You're getting as bad as me.
I know.
We think of
Catching
follow
off
road.
you, yeah.
See what they're collecting on me. Totally neglected. Cursed aside.
We shan't call you non-doms.
You say that, I think Whitecross seems to be the place to develop.
They offered it and the council turned it down at the time.
Right, so, okay, so we move on now from affordable housing, which is a big subject, and we've not spent much time on it, but we do need to look at it, we do need to take a study on it and find out how many single units, how many double units we need. And take it on there pretty quickly, because we do need that sooner rather than later. Right, now the next one we've got, and it's already been covered partially by John. Do the town trust have any plans for developing any of its property or land or installations?
What are you thinking about?
Any town trust property that may be open or being considered for development? So yes or no?
I think the silence is a no.
But the signs
Are you asking me, or are you asking the
generally,
or what?
anybody that knows anything about it, you in particular.
Well, I've answered the question previously when Mr. Adams was talking about it.
No, don't the town trust own a number of plots of land around the village?
What about the park?
Is
You
that
mean
being
St
developed?
Saviour's Hill and the
I should think if we started trying to put the housing on,
I'm not talking about housing, I'm talking about any other development you have in mind. Extending the park, for instance, or making the park more. You have any?
what do you mean extending the park? What park?
Making better facilities up there.
You're talking about a children's playground? Well, there is a committee looking at funding for it, yes.
Okay, that's what I was asking then. Right, well, that's that one answered. Townsend Farm, we've covered this to some degree. Yes, we could go down the road of compulsory purchase via the Cornwall Council, but it's a long and tortuous route.
At least 2 years or more.
And
It's costly, it's costly as
But then-
well.
if that's the route we have to go down, that's the route we have to go down.
Let's just examine it and see what's involved.
But we could incorporate it as an idea in the parish plan.
I mean, we're talking about the 20-year plan, so really,
Because Cornwall Council, I believe now, have got a policy, or coming in, I think it's to do with St Ives, if the derelict buildings in land that's not used by the owner can be taken over by the council. Is that right? And they were bringing out that if a property hadn't been used in 2 years, they were going to take it over for rented housing. That was one of the proposals.
There's no policy.
That's been dropped now.
Well, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it was been in the Western Morning News and the papers a few months ago. The property like empty homes.
Oh, empty homes?
Empty homes.
Yeah, but there has to be a willing landlord with that. There are grants to bring back homes that are empty or derelict or in a poor state of repair. There is, we've got a little revolving fund that would encourage that landowner or that building owner to bring it back. The council doesn't take it over or buy it or do anything. They just help the landowner to bring it back into commercial or for a home.
For affordable rents. That would be the terms of the grant, of the funding to the
Yeah,
landlord.
the grant, if public money is used, then there are some stipulations in it that it has to be made available.
So say if you like Poland, say you had 10%, 15%, for example, unused homes under this policy, then the council, county council, could approach landlords, instead of building housing up top of the hill, they could approach run-down buildings which landlords can't afford to do
There
up,
is an
and then
empty
turn
homes
into
scheme.
affordable rent schemes.
Yes, but they don't take it over or just
No.
claim it. They work with the property owner to bring it back into use.
So that would be one way of alleviating housing problems and bringing life back into the village and actually down the hill. Because Poler and down the hill, I walk down 4th Street and I count the number of houses, I think there's 80 roughly, walking down 4th Street, and I think there's only 10 occupied in the winter.
You can't take them over just if they're not used in the winter,
You can
John.
you can take over holiday lets.
No, I'm not going as
These
far
are
as
derelict
Ives.
houses
Right,
or houses
one
that
opposite
are
over there.
Yeah.
for repair.
Like for example, 53 4th Street. Now that's been run down now for 3-4 years.
Mm.
John, we've been here now, I'm not being funny, mate. We've discussed affordable housing need, yeah, an industrial unit need,
Right.
nothing else. So I think surely we want to move on to saying,
Yes.
what else do we need?
Right,
And sorry,
thanks as well, yeah.
This time's knocking on now.
it is. Right,
Hang on, just Mr. Shackley.
Just a very quick one. I could be in danger of being a few years out of date, but I think I'm right in saying that there are strict rules and regs for compulsory purchase. It is highly controversial, and it is only used by councils in extremis. So obviously it's worth checking and taking advice, but I think it's, in this case, it's a complete non-starter.
okay, well, I accept that. Right, now, can we move on? Now, we'll talk about the doctor's surgery on the quay. It's not very accessible, I think we all agree on that one. There's limited parking down there. You know, if you have to visit the doctor, it's a lottery whether you can park on the quay. The facilities it offers, despite the best efforts of the foyer of practice, are not good when you compare that surgery with the one in Fowey, which is a modern surgery. And then there's the problem of the patients visiting that surgery. The waiting room has no vents, no ventilation at all, apart from a little skylight window with a plastic fan in it or a plastic vent thing. That's the only ventilation in the waiting room. Now, if there's one way to catch a cold or catch whatever's going around, is go and sit in that waiting room. You can catch all kinds of things down there. The doctor's room is small. The nurse's room is accessed by a flight of steep stairs. So really, it is not the best surgery. So in the parish plan, what we'd like to include is an alternative site for the doctor's surgery, or an alternative location, incorporated in what we would like to call a community hub. Now, it needs to be in a place where the population is at its densest. Unfortunately, down below Well, there's not a high population of local people living, because most of that property has been taken up by second owners and holiday lets and things like that. The majority of the people now seem to live above Well. Now, looking at the various sites, again Kendall Park comes in the favourable site because it's accessible by most people, and it will have adequate parking if we put one up there. So that is a thought. Okay, now we'll move on from that one. Anybody got any comments on doctor's surgery?
You talking about oral surgery?
Yep.
Fowey surgery?
Yep.
You go see a doctor down here, you get a prescription, you can get it. Fowey, you got to go down to town to get it.
Yep.
So which is best?
Well,
you got the same parking if you go down into Fowey as you have down here.
Yep.
I shouldn't go down here now, go Fowey.
Well said, Bill. Well, I could answer the question on the surgery and the prescriptions. The prescriptions with the doctor's surgery, Polruan got dispensation because of the ferry for the staff down the surgery to dispense, and the prescriptions are checked by the doctor. So I would imagine, and I would say I would imagine, that the practice of prescriptions down the doctor's surgery on the quay would follow to the new doctor's surgery in Polruan.
Can I just ask what we're looking at here?
When I went to see the doctors to talk about moving the surgery and talking about what they needed, the dispensary would be retained.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Taylor? The dispensary will be retained,
Wherever.
not like Fowey. In fact, if you go Fowey surgery, you'll find Fowey surgery now, over there you'll notice a box where people, aged, elderly, infirm, if they can't get down to collect their prescriptions, they put their prescription in the box by the receptionist desk, or it's on the door, and they come back the following day and those prescriptions are up.
Yeah, but whoever goes down and pick up that prescription.
No, the surgery does it themselves over there.
Look, no.
They do. If you have a look.
If you wanted some medicine or tablets, you got to go down to town.
No, you haven't, Bill, because if you look on the door, and when you're over the surgery there, you will find that people, they come out of the appointment with a prescription, they put it in the box, and then that box is taken down on so many hours basis down to the surgery, down to the chemist, and then brought back up to the surgery.
But that wouldn't be an issue in Polruan anyway, will it?
There wouldn't be an issue because we've got
We're
dispensary.
carrying on as we are up there.
Move on.
Right,
Okay. Let's move on to this community hub now.
right, community hub, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, the community hub would be a building, all right, this is just a rough sketch, it's been prepared. Owned by the people of Polruan and not any particular organisation within Polruan. The community must be by definition, encompass the interests of all the community and endeavour to provide the facilities needed by the majority of the community. With the loss of the local mobile library service, there is a need for a room or a base where library books can be taken to be exchanged or ordered or delivered. As part of the community hub, that's what we would need. Equally important is the reliance now on computers to fill forms in and do various things that you must do online. Some people don't have computers, so there's no reason why we couldn't incorporate into the community hub a computer room that people could be helped to fill forms in or do whatever they need to do on a computer, done by a volunteer, of course. Let's also provide a private room or office, amongst other things, or other people, breadwinners are used when she's seeing people. And finally, arguably the most importantly, that such a hub could, I won't say would, but could, house a new doctor's surgery. For a hub to be usable in Polruan, you need parking for between 50 and 60 cars. And as part of the community hub, or in its grounds, or its car park, we would like to incorporate a landing area for the air ambulance, which we are becoming more and more reliant upon. That's it. Any questions, any comments?
Do you know where it's going to go?
Sorry?
Where would you like it to go?
Well, it could go Hendersfield, or it could go Kendall Park preferably. Yes?
Oh, my questions or comment is about the library service, which is very good at the moment. It's regular every 2 weeks, and we've always used the actual van to change our books, so we don't actually need anywhere special. We just want to make sure that the library continues.
Yeah, that's the point.
This is the
That's
idea of incorporating it.
our main worry.
Because it is, the library van is under threat, isn't it?
Well, it's not under threat that I'm aware of at the moment. I think the point is that Lou Library may be under threat, and I know that people certainly from Polperro use Lou Library. So what's being proposed is to increase the number of, I think they call them, like a library hubs.
Yeah,
there's a machine down it, there actually is a machine in Lou Library where you can stick your book in and it does it all automatically. I think then, is it Lerin, there's one in a pub somewhere where you can the pub is the pub. So I'm not aware of any threat to the mobile service, but like you say, that's only once every 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Whereas you could have somewhere where you could order your book, bring back your old ones and collect the ones that you've ordered. So we're not talking about having lots of books there, it's just a collection point and an ordering point with one of those machines that they've got.
Well, we originally had one in Polruan in the early 90s.
All right.
And the previous priest of the parish, his daughter used to run it, and this cabinet was held in the reading room. But it fell into disuse 20 years ago. But that is the idea we're basing it on, that one room in the community hub would house your would house your library, and that people could order their books.
At any time,
At
not
any
just
time.
once every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, and the WI looked into having the library here, or something like that. And we said, well, you'd have to put up the shelves or pay for the shelves and the electric, which they weren't, the library service wasn't allowed, wasn't happy to do. Also, they said that if we had books there, there would have to be somebody manning it 6 hours a day or something.
No, I think this is what's coming in for the future. There's
Yeah.
going to be
But
volunteers
that was what
work.
we balked at. We weren't willing to, you know.
My understanding, Chairman, is that the WRVS do a home delivery service, and they're contracted by the council to get to people that are vulnerable or can't get out, and that their service, they're not delivering the number of books they're actually contracted to do. So there's some thought that they may be using the auspices of the WRVS to that. But yes, you're right. Volunteer somebody will have to be, this pub,
Nominated
whatever
to
it
look
is,
after it.
there'll have to be something, but that's a detail, I think.
Two things actually. The first one, of course, it is debatable whether volunteers should help make librarians redundant. But ignoring that, may I suggest then that you add to your research questionnaire also what organisations would want to use your hub and what their space and facility requirements would be.
Well, this is all part of it. We're just giving you, I suppose, the nearest, easiest way to describe it is a back of a fag packet drawing.
Yeah, but
because what we're inviting is ideas what we can put into the community.
Yes, but that's why if you do your research, you can tack that question on, can't you? And find out what organisations would want to use it and what their space and usage requirements would be.
Mr. Hill?
Have you any ideas on who would fund that? You know, helicopter landing pad is a phenomenal cost. I don't see Cornwall Air Ambulance or Cornwall Council
But
funding.
we're looking at the future 20 to 30 years, and I myself can see land ambulances getting phased out and air ambulances being used a lot more. At the moment, the air ambulance lands Polo and Hill, Kendall Park, the fire station are about to become first responders, and it seems a rolling practice. They've tried it out down Helston, down in Hale, they've got a tri-service agreement with the fire brigade, police and ambulance service. So what we're looking at the future, we're not looking this year, next year, we're looking at 20 years time. And like Mr. Wild said, with a large car parking area, you just put H on the ground. Helicopter can land anywhere. I've landed anywhere in helicopter. If you land on a ship with a Force 8 rolling around, I don't think you need East Road to land a chopper up in Kendall Park.
Well, you know, their ambulance land on the water.
That's right.
Landed on back.
You know, we're looking at the future of what's likely to happen with services. So that is one of the ideas being put forward for the community hub. Right, Mr. Wild, carry on.
Well, that's about it as far as I'm concerned, so I say questions to the audience.
Right, Mr. Shapley.
If there are any questions directly back to Mr. Wild, and then can I come back afterwards?
Yeah. Questions from the floor, please, to Mr. Wild.
How would we finance this hub? I mean, it's going to be a big building and so on.
Well, the financing of the hub, as local gossip ain't got to you now, we come to the nitty gritty now. So please keep your shirts on.
That's what I was trying
temper,
to do.
right. An offer has been made to purchase the village hall.
The village hall.
The offer has been made to purchase the village hall.
Was it been made to?
Pardon?
By whom?
We're not saying it. An offer has been made to purchase the village hall. And we would look at it as part of the neighbourhood plan. If a good offer is made for anything, we as a parish council got to look at it. It's a serious proposal. Now, we looked at funding the new village hall with the sale of the old village hall and houses, a combination of 6 to 8 houses and the new village hall at the top of Kendall Park. Because as Mr. Wild said, the top of Pole Ruin is now the density. Bottom below Wellside is really sold. It's gone. Pole Ruin people never go back down again.
Would this new hub thing contain all the facilities that the village hall has?
Well, that's what we're trying to put to you now. We've just given you a brief outline of what the new village hall could contain.
Because one of the most important, or active groups that use the village hall, kids club use it, okay, that's a big room, but one of the active groups is the theatre club. And
We understand this,
they have
yes.
poured loads of money into creating a very good theatre that is popular and gets a lot of audience when they put on a play. And this includes dressing rooms and stage facilities, etc.
Would you not prefer those though when you go to watch a play if you could actually park outside and walk into a level building rather than having
That
to
would be less
negotiate.
important than having a good stage facility.
Well, that,
Yes, Mr. Wheatcroft.
Thank you.
I'm just saying.
As you know, I've spoken to you privately and I've said I think it's a great idea. I think there are huge potentials, okay? But I am slightly concerned if somebody has made an offer for the village hall and they're taking part in this discussion, then I think we should be informed of who that person is, because otherwise it kind of taints the entire process.
Well, we'll have to ask that person if they're willing to disclose their name.
Well, that's fine. Otherwise, that person shouldn't be taking part in the
Well,
discussion.
the person's not in the room.
That's fine then. That's all that matters. If they're not here, that's great, isn't it? That's exactly what I was asking.
You know, it's an outside developer.
Well, that's great, isn't it? That's why I was asking you. If the person is in this room, then we should know. And if they're not, then that's absolutely, that's how it should be. And that's good.
So,
Well, I've spoken to the theatre club about this. And what they are particularly concerned about is, as she's just said, that they would need to have at least similar facilities to what they've already got, which is there are 2 changing rooms, there's the backstage area, and there is a proper stage with lighting and sound. And if you give them that, they'd be as happy as Larry.
This is what we've got, a back of a cigarette packet drawing,
Yeah.
and we're inviting ideas. We're looking at constructing a new village hall. Nothing's written in tablets of stone, because whatever research finds, and we reach an eventual agreement on, that we can fund and build a new village hall, then it got to come back to a parish meeting where the members of the electors and residents of the parish have got to have a 75% majority to approve it.
Because the village owns.
No, it's in the deeds of trust, 75%.
Oh, sorry, I do beg your pardon, we're talking about the referendum.
No, not the referendum, we're talking about
Sorry.
the sale of the sale of the village hall. You need a 75% majority.
But this is why I was saying that you need to get your research done so you can identify who the eliters are and what their requirements are.
That's why we're asking this evening.
Just asking the question, do we would like a new village hall in the community, yes or no? If it's yes, then we can go down and argue who's going to have what and do what to it.
Yeah.
It's just a question, yes or no. It's just needs to go on a piece of paper. It's not getting into.
that's why that's basically a rectangle on that piece of paper with 1,000 metres squared, because that's one bloody great big building, which if you include the doctor's surgery in that, is still a lot bigger than the village hall that sits over there now. So, but anyway.
So we've come down to some ideas. We start off then. The last one was Theatre Club would want assurance that their facilities they got at the village hall would be retained in the new community hub. A doctor's surgery, a new version of the library facilities, a meeting room for a councillor, and something like the old wording was internet cafe, because everything's going computerised. But that was the old wording, probably a cyber room or something to come out.
And a big hall for coffee mornings, the kids club.
That's right.
That's part of it.
Yes, Mr. Shapley.
Part and parcel of a plan for the community for the next 20 years is also what we don't want and where we don't want it. But if we just look at, we've very, very nearly covered what we do want. But what I would like an open discussion about is that there's one thing that we've missed, and that is, do we value that we are part of an area of outstanding natural beauty? The rules and regs from the government do appear to begin to relax the restrictions, planning, etc., on national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty. I would hope that if this community sees value in the area of outstanding natural beauty and what that brings to our community and to tourism, that we would reflect that in our plan.
Well, you know, we would look at a new community hub with eco-friendly, but then
I'm not talking, John, about a community hub. I'm talking about whether this community values the fact that we are in a working area of outstanding natural beauty? And do we value what that brings to us and the community? Is that worth hanging on to for the next 20 years, or are we going to discard it?
Well, the answer is, first of all, is which comes first, work or ANOB? Now, you can have ANOB, but they'll be dead as a dodo. But if you've got work, you've got people living in the area, and the area's alive.
Mr Shackman, do you mean?
Excuse me, Susan, can you just calm it, please? Thank you.
You're not on the same wavelength as
Well,
him.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, but can you just calm it, please? Thank you. Polite.
Yeah,
That's fine.
the countryside, the nature of the countryside is that it is a working environment. And if you are like I am, and I appreciate our countryside, especially our local countryside, it has got to be a working environment. Otherwise it will be as dead as a dodo. So, you know, it's that curious mixture. But what I'm trying to get at is, if we value what we have and we want to keep it, it ought to be in the plan.
That's what the plan's all about.
The flip side of the coin, what we don't want, and again, the community plan ought to specify what we don't want. Do we want, for example, a heavy industrial site at Penmartin? I don't know. What are people's views? Do we want an oil terminal? Probably not. You know, that is ridiculous. But what do we want and what don't we want? Where we want it and where we don't want it are the type of questions that we need to answer.
So what we've drawn from this evening's meeting, because we've got to start winding down, it's 8:30. So what we're saying is, first of all, we have a list of questions of opportunities, what you would like, and then at the bottom there'll be a section saying, comments, what we do not want. Would you be happy with that?
I wouldn't say that. What surely, the way the question's asked should give the response, and then from the response you would say, well, that's a no, yes, that's a no, rather than saying, rather than trying to tell people we don't want wind turbines, is
Well, it's basically, that question,
do you
what
want,
do you not want
yeah.
to see within the parish?
That would be, well, that would almost
100 people said they don't want this now, you think, well,
All I was going to say, it's very dangerous to say what you don't want, because things change awful fast. This day and age, technology is changing tremendous, and it's very dangerous to go down the road for the next 20, 25, 30 years and say, well, we aren't going to have that.
We've got to have a degree of flexibility.
You've got to move the wiggle room. Be able to move.
Not written, only certain items written in tablets of stone. Because once this neighbourhood plan is produced, it then becomes statutory.
Yeah, well, this is a problem, man. You've got to be very careful what you push for.
Yes, Mr. Hill.
You've got to do your research, but you've obviously got to ask the right questions, like, you know, and find out who's in the community and what they're looking for. You know, I'm single living at home and I would like somewhere to rent or to buy, or I'm a growing family and I want a house to rent or buy, I want employment, that sort of question. A committee will never come up with will take years to come up with a proper thing. Perhaps somebody can do, through the parish council, could do a sort of a draft questionnaire, bring it back to at the next neighbourhood meeting, and if it's published to or available that people can read it before they come to the meeting, then the public can have the input and perhaps tweak the question before it goes out.
So would the majority of people, would everybody think that before our next neighbourhood meeting, a questionnaire, a flexible questionnaire will be presented to the next meeting with the neighbourhood plan to see how it's run?
But I would suggest that the draft be available a week beforehand to anybody who wants to get hold of it, whether it's through the parish council website or a few could be printed off and available through the winkle picker or somewhere like
So,
that,
so if
so
possible,
that people can have a go through it before they come to the meeting.
so if possible, put it in the parish news magazine.
No,
Well,
you've got to be careful because
yeah.
some people think that's the real
Yeah.
one, haven't you?
The internet's good where people can get that.
So
Well, your parish council
put it on the
website,
parish website.
draft for consideration.
Draft survey.
As long as you say that it's a draft
Draft.
for consideration, then people shouldn't, I don't say won't, but shouldn't get the wrong end of the stick. Maybe.
I was going to ask, is it worth people writing down their email addresses so people
And
look
everybody,
at it?
not everyone has the internet, especially the elderly people, and whereas the parish news might be
Yeah.
available.
Well, or
Yeah, but that's only
Right.
2 monthly, the parish news.
The parish news goes to everybody and some people might,
Get confused.
they'll get confused and they'll think that is the real deal.
Not
Without
if
it
you
being,
put
if you put preliminary draft,
big letters across it.
Yes.
Just on a practical note, the due date for the next parish news is already passed and it's due out at the beginning of the next month. The next one is not due out until the beginning of December. The date for copy will be the middle of November. I don't know whether that fits in with the sort of timescale you're talking about or not.
Well, a brief note of this meeting will be written up tonight and will be given to Sue Shackley and passed or incorporated in the next parish magazine coming out. Providing we've got it written up by 11 o'clock tomorrow morning.
No, I was talking about the draft. People
Oh,
were
the
talking
draft.
about putting the draft questionnaire. That's what I was talking about, John.
It's good by bollocks, so
look like sheep.
Your question about the theatre.
You won't go home.
What is in there?
So has anybody else got any serious questions? Do they think there's enough hot air been expended? Yes, Sylvia.
John, I have one, and that is that since the...
Could you speak up a bit, please?
Yes, just one issue, that since the village hall has not been on the open market and has not been for sale, the fact that now an offer has been made, you say from an outside developer, I'd like to just register the concern that the parish council does what it can to ensure that a fair price, a fair market price, is put on the value of that site, and that it is open and transparent, because the village hall belongs to the village.
That's right. No, it belongs to the parish, not the village.
it belongs to the village.
No, it's the parish.
You think it is the village, but it is the parish.
It's the parish. The deed of trust specifically states it belongs to the
It
parish.
does say parish.
yet the village bought it.
But
No, the parish council bought it.
My point is that it's my point is that it's an open and transparent process. The whole anything to do with the sale of that very valuable
I
land.
can reassure you on that, because when we've been talking with Affordable Homes, Councillor Hannaford and other people, one of the first things they said to us, before you do anything, you have to have a proper valuation carried out of the property. And that was one thing. It was Councillor Hannaford was at the meeting, and that was one thing that was stressed.
Thank you.
Sure, it should be
Independent
offered for
valuer.
sale on the open market, shouldn't it, if it's going to be offered for sale at all?
We're only talking, we've been made an offer.
Well, that doesn't mean you can't now
No,
put
no.
a sale sign up, does it?
That's right. It's up to you, the parish, but all we're being open with is we're designing a neighbourhood plan for the future. And one of the items that come up was an outside developer offered to buy the village hall site. And as Cynthia states, the first thing that's got to be considered, that a proper valuation is done of the property.
When was this offer made, Jim?
Why doesn't the village know about it if the
Yeah, when
village
was this
doesn't
offer made, John?
parish?
But there again, once again, it's only hypothetical at the
Yeah,
moment.
but when was
Some-
the offer made?
Somebody,
Please, John.
Only about, well, it came to me about 6 weeks ago.
6 weeks ago, thank you.
John, that it was bought, I was on the committee at the time, we bought it from the church.
That's
It
right.
was bought by subscription, there was a big thermometer down at
Yeah.
the bottom of the village,
Everybody can...
and everybody bought it, so.
The deeds of trust specifically state the parish, and the parish council paid the money. because there's a gentleman there who signed that deed of
We
trust.
all paid the money, we all subscribed.
Yeah, but
Yes, the whole parish.
it's the whole
subscribed.
parish
Okay,
subscribed.
the parish did, but
It's
not,
the
not
parish.
the council. The parish council didn't do it.
Yes,
This, person who wants to buy the village hall and develop it, what does he or she or they want to do with it? Has that been stated?
no, I haven't a clue.
3 guests.
Second home.
Second homes. You know, it's up to that person what they wish to do with it. All we can say is there's an outside developer is offered to purchase it. As Mrs. Lockyer stated, the first thing you need to do is an independent valuer look at it and give a proper valuation. Mr. Wheatcroft says you can put it on the open
No,
market.
Mr. Wheatcroft actually says that I believe it's owned by the members of this parish, not by the parish council, and that it's the members of this parish that need to decide whether it goes for
No,
sale or not.
there's two stages of that. The title of the village hall is held by the parish council. The charity is,
I know that.
right, you know that, but the people who decide what happens to the village hall is not the parish council, it is the residents of the parish. Yes,
That's what they're saying.
nothing else can be done. We can talk to the cows come out, but the final say is the residents of this parish attend a meeting and listen to the proposals put forward, and they make their decision.
I wish I'd said that.
So in other words, it can't be sold, no matter what offers have been made, until all the residents.
That's correct, yes.
A 75% majority.
75% majority. Right, has anybody got any final questions? Do we wish to go home? If not, I would say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.